Universalist congregation with no geographical boundary, working toward creating a global spiritual community rooted in profound love, which cultivates wonder, imagination, and the courage to act. Adapting to the COVID-19 pandemic has been difficult for many bricks and mortar congregations. Early on in the pandemic, we were in a unique position to assist many congregations with the transition. We hosted special episodes of The View, provided advice and counseling to religious professionals, and trained congregations for live streaming worship, all while providing robust online programming for our members. From worship to covenant groups, from classes to pastoral care, and from our monthly magazine to our letter writing ministry, we have found ways to build connection and community even through the screen. We have been a model for ministry on the margins, providing services for isolated Unitarian Universalists, becoming a spiritual lifeline for our members in prison, and investing in innovative ministry. We know better than anyone how deep and meaningful connections can be formed even from a distance. Unitarian Universalists have faced many challenges in these times, and we continue to persevere and to fight for justice and equity for all people, especially during moments of crisis. We are proud to be a leader in this faith movement, and we invite you to get involved in our ministry. We strive to be a place where anyone from anywhere can find spiritual refuge anytime they need it. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Larger Fellowship. We are so excited to bring you an all-new episode of The View. The View is a weekly Unitarian Universalist talk show discussing important faith-based topics from an anti-racist, anti-oppressive, and multicultural perspective. Every Thursday for the past 7 years, we have welcomed guests from every corner of the world. Our guests are writers, scholars, activists, and religious thought leaders who are shaping Unitarian Universalism and society for the 21st century and beyond. I hope today's show inspires you. Hope it builds your faith. Hope it gives you perspective to see the power of Unitarian Universalism at work in your life. Enjoy the message. Hello, I'm Aisha Hauser. Welcome to The View, Voices of Unitarian Universalism, where yesterday I found out scientists added 1 more minute to the doomsday clock. And what the fuck is the point of the doomsday clock? But we'll get into that and more on today's host show of The View. I am in Seattle, Washington, land of the Squamish, the Coast Salish people. And the weather is gray, as it is wont to do here in Seattle. So having a good day so far. Chris, how are you? Where are you? And how close are you to the doomsday clock? Fuck, what is that?
Hi, everyone. Christina Rivera coming to you, she, her pronouns. I'm coming to you from the beautiful land in central, that would be central Virginia, land of the Monacan peoples. I'm a Tino native here visiting on these lands. And it is gray and ugly. And yesterday was sleet and ice kind of day. So it's just yuck in general. And I think I'm a little bit closer to the doomsday clock because I'm closer to DC. But that's all I really know about the doomsday clock. Michael, how you doing?
Greetings, everyone. Michael Tino here in Peekskill, New York, in the beautiful Hudson Valley of New York, just a little north of New York City, where, if something happens that means doomsday, like, we're fucked here. It is a beautiful gray winter day here in New York. There were actually flakes of frozen precipitation that fell from the sky yesterday, and it caused the schools to let out early, and not a thing stuck to anything. Um, we have not had it. Thank you, climate change. We have not had measurable snowfall in the New York City metropolitan area yet this winter, which is pretty astounding here on January 26th. Um, and while I hate snow, so there's part of me that's okay with that, I'm really not okay with the reason for it. But we can get into that later. DC Fortune is here. How are you, DC?
Hi, I am well. I am coming to you from central Pennsylvania on the banks of the Susquehanna River, named for the historic occupants of this land, the Susquehanna people, part of the Lenni Lenape cohort. And it's gray here. It's one of those weird days where I can never tell what time it is. I can't tell whether it's like 10 in the morning or 2 in the afternoon. I just have to sort of wonder why I'm hungry and think maybe it might be lunchtime. But yeah, we got some snow yesterday too. And again, everything here shut down like the world was going to end. And then it rained. And then it all went away. And there's a tiny little bit on like the north side of my house where the sun doesn't get to, but that's about it. Yeah. So things are doing okay here. It's my first winter in this part of the country, so I'm learning how people do things, which mostly means if it snows, nobody does anything. But okay, it could be worse. It could be, like when I lived in Maine, where it's like it's only 8 inches, we can go to work. Yeah. So yeah. So it's not bad. Aisha, bring us back, please.
So we have a host show, and I forgot the disclaimer that if you are offended by 4-letter words that start with fuck or shit or any of that, then this may not be the show for you. So we can really start anywhere. I was going to start with your roundup, but I really wanted to. So the doomsday clock is 90 seconds away from midnight, which apparently midnight means nuclear war or nuclear. And this is because Putin's a piece of shit who decided to invade Ukraine, apparently, because the rest of the world is trying to defend Ukraine. He may use nuclear weapons. So on that happy note, let's all just chime in on how everyone's doing. And then there's fucking Florida. DeSantis is on the race to become the world's worst asshole leader. I don't know. Let's just whoever wants to say. I'm ready.
Start with when did it become okay to just like bald face lie? Like at least, I feel like in prior times, like at least the lies were just a little bit like they just weren't so much in your face, and the press would call you. The reason they weren't so, it's like the press would call you on this, and now it's just like I can just say anything I want. It feels like, or my representatives, my government representatives. It's not me because I'm not a government representative. They're the ones that are getting elected. Can just say anything that they want. They can say that they were robbed of their shoes in New York City. They can say that they both make absolutely no money and are a multimillionaire. They can say like the things that he is saying are just so just like out there and bald-faced lies, and it's just like, okay. Yes.
Oh, I'm wondering which piece of shit you're talking about.
Okay. I drove through George Santos's district the other day, so like he's right over here. It's astounding. It's absolutely astounding. But
wow.
What I don't understand.
No shame. Nobody has shame. Their shame has evaporated. Even Richard Nixon, even Spiro Agnew had shame enough that they freaking resigned. Not for the good of the country or anything else, but because, okay, I got caught. There's no way out of this. Shit, I'll just go home.
Well, and they were pressured by their own people. That didn't happen with the hate pumpkin, the dude before Joe Biden. Nobody pressured. They used him because they wanted to push their agenda.
Nobody did that to Reagan either. I mean, you want to go all the way back? Reagan made shit up like in front of the microphone all the time. And I forget who it was. There was one of his press people who once described his job as like the guy at the circus who follows the elephant around with the shovel. because that's like Ronald Reagan kept saying dumb shit, and this guy had to sweep it up. But nobody ever called anybody on it.
And I feel like some of those were lies of like ignorance. Like a lot of what Reagan lied about, he just didn't know about. Like he was just,
I think
he was
pretended.
just spouting off.
I think he pretended to be ignorant really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was just making it up as he went along, as opposed to like this interview that DeSantis gave in South America. Well, I mean, it's just like lie after lie. And I'm like, is it because he's speaking a different language? Is it because he thinks he's in a different area? Like, what in the world is going through their minds?
In my best moment, I can think to myself, this is not a moral thing. This is a pathological thing.
Oh yeah.
This is a man who needs treatment.
It's a pathological thing that has been enabled by.
Yes, I was literally thinking that.
Yes.
By the it used to be that there were mainstream media outlets that would call people on things. And say what you will about corporate media, there's always been problems, right? But when we got to the 24-hour cable news cycle, and every point of view, no matter how based in reality, had its own cable news network. Right? So it's enabled by the fact that there's an entire news network, or an entire network that calls itself a news network,
Right.
that will back up whatever bullshit gets spewed from the mouth of a Republican. Right? So Ron DeSantis can say whatever he wants, and Fox and Friends will swear that it's true. Right? The former president can say whatever he wants, and Fox and Friends will tell people to inject bleach into their veins to or take hydroxychloroquine horse dewormer, or whatever it is that's like literally killing people. They'll swear that it's true. They'll swear that it's scientifically accurate. They'll swear
But that's the precursor for then what he's doing with the African American AP Studies group, when he says that this is damaging, this is harmful to the United States. And then because he said all those other things and he's backed up, they're like, oh yeah, this is what's wrong with the United States. We're actually teaching history. Like, it's just, oh my God. Like,
well, because they understand that if you actually teach people history, they will know that the things that they're doing are not based in.
Well, I think what DeSantis is doing right now, this is actually even 10 times more insidious. I don't even think it's about it. It's about saying to white people, I will protect your whiteness. So
exactly.
I used to say for a long time, I bought into the bullshit that poor white people vote against their self-interest. No, they don't. They vote for their whiteness. It's not, they don't give a shit about, it's not that they don't give a shit about being poor. It's that that's not their self-interest. Their self-interest is maintaining white supremacy. And so
I thought when I lived in Los Angeles, I say this to people all the time, when I lived in Los Angeles before I moved to the South, I thought Southern politics, all those people voting against their self-interest, what the hell is going on? They are I thought they were ignorant. I thought they were stupid. And I moved here and I'm like, they are super smart. They are super organized. They are voting in a way that preserves them in the long run. It may not help them in this moment. Poor families are still going to be poor, but they and their descendants are still going to be white. And that is going to still privilege them. Right. And so it wasn't until I got here that I was like, oh, okay, now I get it.
It preserves their proximity to power. But
their imagined proximity to power.
Right. But the power is not really doing them any good.
It is
than-
doing them good.
Yeah.
I would counter that and by saying they can get stopped by the police without being killed. It is doing them good.
Right.
They
It-
at any
Fair.
economic level, whiteness still will do you good in the United States of America. You can be as poor as shit, and whiteness will still privilege you in ways that it doesn't privilege everybody else, people of color, Black, Indigenous people of color. And you know, I'm not saying that those folks don't have it hard. Right? Let's not do not all white people. Like, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, even in those situations, it still privileges them in ways that keeps them alive, that it doesn't
Yes.
keep other folks
Yes.
alive.
Yes, very true.
Yeah. Joseph Goebbels famously said that if you repeat a lie often enough, it becomes truth. And the first time I saw that in action was with Reagan, because he just blanketed the airwaves and the print media and everything else. His administration just pumped out so much crap and so much shit and so much lies so often that they completely overwhelmed the existing media at the time. And so they weren't able to challenge all of those lies. You know, there just wasn't enough. And I mean, we have seen newspapers die at an alarming rate. We have seen what the heck was the law that they repealed that prevented major networks from owning major newspapers in the same market? Remember that? Right? Local.
Nope.
The
We just
DC
lost
president.
DC. DC was going to say
Am I
something.
still here?
Oh, there you are.
Yes.
Back.
Oh, yeah. Look, my internet is unstable. It's not the only thing, honey.
Oh, DC.
No, but I mean, the free press is not free. It costs money. And you know, and people consume more readily what is free. You go online nowadays to try and find a news story, an accurate news story, and you go to the New York Times website and there's a paywall. And you go to Fox News and it's free and open for you to absorb all of that horse shit you want to at no charge.
They call themselves an entertainment network, Fox News. That's how they get around being sued.
Which
Right.
isn't to say that we don't
allowed in
need to be
Canada?
supporting this. We don't need to be supporting the press and the journalists. It means that we need to be supporting them in even more higher and different ways, right? Because like, we want all those people at New York Times and you know, Washington Post. We want all of those people well employed, well engaged. We want them to be able to go out and do the investigative reporting that we need them to be doing. But we have to find a way to do that while still offering that information to everybody the way that Fox does, right?
Right. Yeah. And we need to support small local press. Right.
Well, and places like Unicorn Riot and Democracy Now! And really alternative, explicitly independent. And they don't even take advertising. And there's another one that I'm started following now. The name has escaped me. But I do want to name right now real quick, because UUs are not immune from lying bullshit. And, Chris and I, there are things that have been out there that people say stupid shit and really just make up insidious, horrible things. And, unless, and that shit is allowed to thrive when no one challenges it. And then when you challenge it, there has to be, folks who are brave enough to make their white friends uncomfortable. Because the only reason not to challenge it is because you don't want to make people feel bad. rather
Right.
and let a lie about. I mean, some of the things that I've heard both about me and Chris has been truly like, it's a miracle we're still UUs. Let's just be clear.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, yeah.
And the rumor mill that continues to circulate that takes so much more effort to counter with the truth that it's just amazing.
And it's not just, I mean, it's not just about like rumors, but there are people spinning entire false narratives about
Yes.
things that have happened that I am really, some of which I am not at liberty to discuss publicly because I know too many confidential details of, but entire made up narratives
Yeah.
out there about like events, about decisions that have been made, about
We can say, I would say,
let's be clear that the recent defellowshipping of ministers within Unitarian Universalism, some of the most quote unquote controversial ones, have almost nothing to do with what they did, but to have so much to do with the fact that they refused to engage in a process that when they were fellowshipped, they said they would engage with. Right?
Correct.
So we can't even get to the things that they actually did or did not do, or what their intentions were, or make reparation or make repair, because when you become fellowshipped, you make a solemn and sacred vow that you are going to be in relationship in a particular way. And I'm sorry if you don't like that, how that is when it's not going your way, you know, but for you, but for these folks to go away, to not participate in the process and then say, oh, well, I didn't get to have my say.
Well, and it's sad. It's sad sometimes that the people who actually know what's going on are bound by confidentiality because we actually have ethics.
Yeah, let me be clear. I am not bound. Michael is bound because Michael is serving in particular roles. I am not bound in that same way because
and
I
neither
am
am
not
I.
serving in that
Neither
particular
am I.
role. And I'm absolutely happy to say that these fuckers are out there trying to make it seem like somehow they are persecuted. Somehow they are persecuted when they have all of the power in the world to just walk away from this and say, no, you know what? It's not for me.
Or to self-publish books. I love when people are like, my free speech is being curtailed in a self-fucking-published book being sold on Amazon. Give me a fucking break right now.
It's freaking on Amazon. How am I censoring your shit if somebody can go to Amazon and download it? Tell me how that is censorship. Tell me how I am injuring you by saying your book is a piece of shit. That's my opinion. I get to have that. I get to say that. That's not censorship. That's just like telling the truth.
People misunderstand the freedom of speech. You have freedom to speak. You have the freedom to say all the dumb shit you want. You are not free from the consequences of that speech.
Yep.
If you shout racist shit, people are going to call you on it and smack you about the head and shoulders until you straighten up and fly right. Or they're going to tell you to get out. Right? Like that. I'm sorry. That's not tolerated here. Go someplace else with that nonsense. Right? You have the right to say it here. Right? This is where we have boundaries, and we will not tolerate these things. And professional organizations have the right to set those boundaries, right? About ethics and about what we will and will not do in relationship with each other and within the performance of our professional roles.
Can I ask a question?
You have to, I mean, these folks, you know, they signed up to be fellowship.
Yeah.
It wasn't like anybody was running around after them saying, hey, you know, there's nobody running after me going, hey, Chris, you need to get fellowship. If I want to get fellowship, I've got to submit my name. I've got to go through all the paces. I've got to agree to all of the guidelines. I've got to be the one that puts my name down.
Well,
incurs the zillions of dollars in student debt, and goes through the microscopic examination of every part of your psyche, and yada yada yada. Right? It's not like this happened by accident.
Exactly.
and I think I can say this. So to be clear, I'm on the committee that admits and removes people from fellowship. So
Committee.
the committee, the Ministerial Fellowship Committee of the UUA. I think I can say this and be okay with my ethical obligations to that role. Nobody is removed from fellowship lightly. It is not a decision. It is not a decision that is taken on a whim. It is a decision that is taken after deep investigation, and when someone comes before us, like many hours of conversation with both people who complain and people who are accused of things. um it is it's hard,
Mm.
and uh and there are hundreds and hundreds of pages in each one of these reports that we have to read. And so we read hundreds of pages of reports, of evidence collected by investigators that we pay, um, of things that are submitted, of responses by people who've been complained against. And it's hard, right? And
Mm.
when someone says, I wasn't even told what the charge was against me, you can be assured out there in Viewland that that is a lie. You can, because they've responded to it, right? They read the documents, they've read the investigations, and they were given the chance to respond to it. So it like I don't so I think that's the limit of what I can say. I think that's the limit.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the limit of what I can say. And you should have a show, just the three of you, to talk much more freely about it.
Well, I do appreciate that, and I appreciate the the clear message that that this isn't unknown, that there have been, that there are always opportunities given to discuss and um, repair. And if people don't want to participate in that, you can't make them. Like,
Right? Yeah,
if somebody
yeah.
injures me out there in Unitarian Universalism, I can't make them participate in repair. I can't say this is what happened, and this person be allowed to do that harm to someone else. That's basic
Right.
human compassion and process.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
And we're going to switch topics, if I may.
Please.
So hypothetically, many of our brick and mortar congregations rent their spaces, usually the RE spaces, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, hypothetically, if a congregation is approached by a more conservative institution to rent their property, let's say, I don't know, a Catholic school, a Mormon school, what do you think the congregation's obligation is? And here's what I'm getting at. That one argument is made. Well, to me, the obvious argument is, I'm sorry, no, because they're anti-bodily autonomy, anti-LGBT institutions. However, there's another argument made mostly by white people who, center money more than ethics. I guess I gave my opinion on that. That we need to be inclusive. And I'm like, I think that's a false equivalency, and it's not an inclusive thing. It's actually
we have this conversation a lot in the administrators group, because often the administrators are the first line of getting those kinds of inquiries that come in, and are having to be the ones that explain our values and one of the bottom lines that I always put into those conversations is we have no obligation to invite evil into our space.
What if people say we need the money and we're being inclusive and we do?
We have no obligation. We have no obligation to invite evil into our space.
Budgets are moral documents.
Yes, they are.
Right?
Rental contracts are for our congregations are moral documents.
Yes.
The idea that we somehow have to play devil's advocate or allow devil's advocates into cases in order to make it fair is absolutely ridiculous.
So I have a question, and this is I can't remember what workshop I was in, dear God, where the question was, and it was about tax exempt status and such, and a congregation was renting space to a non-religious thing. It was like lawyers or somebody rented these other 3 rooms in the back for office space, whatever, and their attorney told them that if they do that, they are now that part of their property is subject to commercial law, and they cannot discriminate if they are going to be in commercial business, and that part of their property cannot be considered tax exempt because it is not being used for religious function.
So
is that real?
It is real, but what are the discrimination laws in that state, right? So you can't discriminate against protected classes, right? So you can't say we will not let you in because you are this religion.
Okay.
You can say we will not let you in because your stances on these issues do not support the values of our faith, right? Stances on issues are not a protected class.
Right.
Right? Most of the time in most states, political affiliation is not a protected class.
Right.
You can say we will not let you in because you're
Democrat,
the rent is too damn high party, and we just don't believe in that, or whatever. Like I'm trying to make something up.
Right.
That was an actual party in New York State.
Right. I
On
remember.
the ballot. So if political affiliation is a protected class in your state, then you can't say that for spaces that are rented as a public accommodation.
Right.
But your stance on reproductive freedom and abortion access is not a protected class, right? Your acceptance of or non-acceptance of LGBTQ people and like what you do is not a protected class, right? So if it was a school that didn't let trans kids in, we can say your stance on transgender equality is anathema to our religious values, and we will not rent to you. And that's not their stance. Their stance is not protected.
Right.
Well, and that's what I say. And there's an idea. I think the fallacy that is sometimes out there among white UUs, I'm going to say, because I'd like to think Black and brown UUs in general have a different experience of Unitarian Universalism. But I think there's a fallacy that, for example, if you rent to, I don't know if there's a liberal Catholic school, but let's pretend because if they're run by the Catholic Church, they're not liberal, but that somehow them being in our space, we're going to influence them. And that doesn't fucking happen. It truly doesn't. And so I think saying like we're being inclusive is creating a false, I said, look, there's no middle ground. I'm not halfway to a fucking Nazi. So let's be clear. There's no middle ground when we're talking about religious people who want to take away bodily autonomy, who are targeting trans children. Give me a fucking break. And targeting, or actively listen, especially the fucking Catholic Church. They started Manifest Destiny. Are we all kidding right now? The residential schools, like that.
Right.
I can go on and on. But the fallacy is that somehow they're going to come into our spaces and then be influenced by us. That is not the case. And let's not live with that delusion.
Well,
No. I mean, I think if we wanted to have, if you're going to have an interfaith, if they're going to have an interfaith lunch every day, with all of those kids and, have a free lunch for kids in the neighborhood, and somehow that's going to, sure, but it has to be intentional. Just by being in a space with a chalice isn't you a Unitarian Universalist. I mean,
and there are some really good examples, like concrete examples that we can point to. So for many years, the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Philadelphia was one of the premier venues for like punk music in Philadelphia. They rented out their basement to music promoters, and they were proud of that, and it was a good thing. And at some point, those promoters started inviting punk musicians who were on the white supremacist fringe of punk music, and the church had to say no, and it was a major source of their income.
Yeah.
And they had to say no. They had to say, we're really happy to have this community of punk rock fans come to our building, but not if that's the message of the music. No, no, and no. And it was a big controversy because it was a huge part of their budget.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what I was just going to say. I think you're right, Aisha, that the pressure on congregations, to see budget making or money making endeavors as somehow exempt
or neutral,
right? To because they support the rest of our mission, because that money supports the rest of our mission. It somehow that makes it okay. I think you're right. There's tremendous pressure in congregations to I wouldn't even say walk that line, like cross that line.
Especially when the admins or DFOs aren't UUs. I think they don't have the same kind of attachment. And it's no diss on them. They have a job to do. I get it. It's like, but it's up to, I think, the folks who I think it's less that white liberals in general are in this idea you can walk some line, but there's still some holdouts of white liberals that are like, no, we could be inclusive of even people with shitty oppressive ideas. No, we can't.
No, we can't. Like those are the people who want to reach out to the Nazis. Fuck them. No.
Yeah.
And do what?
Well, maybe if we understand them, we can.
No, get the fuck
no,
out of here.
I know.
I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm getting look, y'all gotta see my shirt. Forever anti-fascist.
And
the Reverend Deanna Vanderberg gave me this shirt.
I like that.
That's
it's entirely possible that there will be a business resolution on the GA agenda about divesting from fossil fuel companies and the financial institutions that fund fossil fuel companies. And like, I don't know what it's the Young Adult Caucus is putting this together, which gives me a warm feeling in my heart to begin with. But I read the thing, and I'm not sure what I think of every clause in it, and like, it's not up to me to decide what I think of. When our money is invested in Chevron or ConocoPhillips, even though we've passed resolutions again and again and again on climate change and on investing, like divesting from the companies that are causing the greatest harm with climate change, and then we go and invest in
Well,
fucking oil pipeline companies.
right. So yes. So here's the real sort of part that makes me throw up in my mouth about that is UUs were called to Standing Rock.
Yes.
UUs were called to Standing Rock, and they were fire hosed by companies in which the UUA holds stock.
It's perverse.
Oh, right? Right? Like our people, we told them to go there. We said, this is a fight that we want to engage in. This is with our values. We need to do this. And all of our grant money comes from this portfolio that is chock-a-block full with fossil fuel companies.
Well, and it's the common endowment fund too. So it's the endowment money of many congregations, including CLF, that's invested, and it needs to adhere to our values.
Yeah.
Because the way we invest it is a moral decision.
Yep.
Like that we're in the business of capitalism is morally bad enough.
So I years ago I had an AA sponsor in Seal Harbor, Maine, right? This tiny little, this is where Martha Stewart has her summer place, right? Little swanky place, right? Where Rockefellers, like there are a bunch of Rockefellers that live there. So money is a thing there. And this woman that I knew, her parents had invested heavily in coal companies and rail companies in Pennsylvania. And she inherited this stock. And by the time she inherited the stock, the brakes had been put on a bunch of stuff. They'd been regulated. They'd been like the rape and pillage was over for the most part. Ish, right? And what she did was she used that money. Every now and then she'd get a check, and she'd use that to send women to rehabilitation programs that they otherwise would not have been able to afford to help them get clean and sober. And I will also say that when I was a home repair contractor working in that area, I was hired by people who had values very, very different from me. And I did good work because it was my ethic, my personal ethic. And for every job I did, I donated a portion of my salary to some organization that I knew would go right up their ass. Like I would send it to Planned Parenthood, or I would send it to the Human Rights Campaign Fund, or I would send it to Equality Maine, or whatever. I would say, okay, I'll take your money, but I'm going to use it in ways that you absolutely would not like. I mean, I had to make a living, and I was like living in Mount Desert Island. There weren't a lot of places that shared my politics that were able to pay me. So what do you do, right?
Well, I think there's different. I mean, I don't fault anyone for. I mean, I'm making money teaching people not to be fucking racist, or trying to. I don't know how successful I am at any given time. And I think about that. I'm like, this is a weird way to make money. And I also, do what you do and donate. Lavender Rights Project. We should have them on too. Jalen Scott again. But I think the bigger thing for me is, okay, so if we're going to talk about divestment, how many large endowments in Unitarian Universalism can be traced right back to the slave trade and to cotton fields. And how much is Unitarian Universalism owe reparations? I mean, let's go down that rabbit hole.
Whew. I wonder if we could get somebody on the show from the endowment fund.
Maybe.
Like that, like
is that a UUA department? Is that Lawrence Smith's department? Like, what's the endowment? Is that
there's a group, a committee that is responsible for the investment of the endowment fund. It's run through. I don't know the name of our new CFO. He's not new anymore. Andrew something. It's run through Andrew's.
Something.
Andrew, yeah, it's run through Andrew's office, and it's made up of, volunteers, and many of whom do investing in their professional lives. And I will give it up to them. In the past few years, they have really done some really beautiful work. And Tim Brennan, who was our CFO before Andrew, was instrumental in investor organizing and activism in a lot of ways as well. And that doesn't mean that we can't do more and do better.
Yeah, I mean, I think shareholder activism is one thing, and I totally appreciate that the UUA is involved in shareholder activism.
Yeah.
Yeah, but tell me, like shareholder activism means something if you are able to get a majority of shareholders to your side. Then you have power. Really? See that now? Yes. I want to hear about that. And what have we accomplished?
We absolutely have done. Tim Brennan was instrumental in shareholder activism that changed policy of major corporations. I believe it was Xerox. I could be wrong. I can't remember what the issue was. Was it marriage equality? We should have them on because shareholder activism is real, and it when it's done well, it actually can move these vast corporations into doing what needs to be done. For sure.
Everybody disappeared. Are you back?
I'm here.
Aisha and I are still here.
Okay. All right. My internet connection. I wonder if it's got something to do with the ice and stuff on the lines. Anyway.
Could be. It could be.
But I think
I think that'd be great. And I mean, we could get Tim Brennan on the show to talk about shareholder activism.
I was just thinking that's a good idea to have.
And I want to hear from the young people who are putting forth this proposal.
Yep.
Right. I want to hear from them.
It's a very good idea.
Because I had a chance to have some conversations with some of them at GA last year, and they were feeling really frustrated. Because they were trying to leaflet and let people know that this is what is happening. And I mean, they're doing standard street activism stuff, and they were shut down by the convention center at the request of the UUA.
Do we know it's at the, I'm only saying this because I do know that convention centers have, and Portland especially, I think have their own internal restrictions on, because they don't want garbage everywhere. So do we, I just want to make sure that we know for sure it was the UUA.
What I would say is the conversations I had with people, they reported to me that they were told by the convention center and by the police that the UUA had requested this, had told them to shut them down. So
I mean, I don't doubt that. I guess what I'm saying is I would first look at the reason for that, because I do know in terms of conference planning that it could be that we would have been, and again, money shouldn't be why we shouldn't do things, but I would ask more questions about why and not automatically think.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm just bigger issue. Go ahead.
No, I was just like, this is what the conversation. This is what I heard in the conversations that I had.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
I think the bigger issue, I mean, we're talking about divestment, we're talking about the bigger issue is this country is I saw, I don't know, a meme or something like the United States is one of the only places where where there's the belief that somehow the government doesn't exist to take care of us. When people talk about handouts, I'm like, what the fuck's wrong with handouts? Like, we should have universal basic income. We should have universal health care. Why wouldn't we want to pool our resources and take care of each other? But there's such a hostility, not just against the government, but again, it's because we've never had reparations. And when we talk about reparations, yes, we can just write checks because we do it all the time, but it's also about telling the truth. And it's about repair and creating a system that isn't based on fucking cruelty in this country. We're such a cruel system in general. Like, it's great that rich people will, support, however many people, but what we need is for the fucking rich to pay their fair share of fucking taxes, which also Reagan fucked up. All equals lead to Reagan.
Well, and that brings us full circle, right, to
genocide. Sorry.
To the people who are spreading lies
right.
in order to stay in power.
Circle.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
we're back. We're back.
I heard a really amazing thing on 1A on NPR last week before, and it was a conversation about generational power and how the boomer power, the boomers are gradually phasing out of power, simply by the march of time, right? Like, they're not going to live forever. They're, that's just how that works, right? Well, but one of the interesting things that I learned was that in the years when the boomers were growing up, immigration in the United States was locked down, solid. Nobody was getting in. So this cohort that grew up in fairly static environments, largely white, with no changes, with no new people coming in, right? Immigration loosened up in the 1970s. I remember, some of you are old enough to remember the stories about the Cambodian boat people that were suddenly the influx of immigrants that were causing concern at that time.
I immigrated in the 70s. I'm
right?
one of those immigrants.
I understand what you're saying, DC, but we didn't have immigration policies until the 1980s.
Well,
we didn't have lockdown immigration. We had seasonal, at least from Central and South America. We had no borders. We had people coming in to do work during agricultural seasons and then going home.
Okay.
So I think it's true that we didn't have immigration as in immigration of people coming here and then staying here.
That's what I mean. That's what they were talking about. And so, because Gen X completely and because the boomers completely ignored Gen X, like, we don't exist, we're just not there. So the next demographic the next cohort that they look at as a legitimate successor to their power is the millennials, who are way less vested in the power structure that the boomers now are. They're much more diverse. They're much more progressive. They don't care about who you marry or who you love or what your gender is or what color your hair is or how many piercings you've got. They just don't give a fuck, right? And so this group of boomers cannot recognize anything of themselves in this new generation and is unwilling to let go of power to something that they do not see as legitimate. So it's not just about age, it is totally about white supremacy.
Yep.
And the boomers came to power in the 70s. So they have been in power for 50 years. So there is no institutional memory of anybody else being in power. Right?
Well, Gen Z fucked their shit up during the midterms, and that's why there was not a red wave. Go Gen Z. We have 1 minute left.
but I like, that's significant, and it helps me, at least from my little white world, yet another understanding of why the people who are so desperately clinging to power are clinging to power so desperately.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
Because they simply don't recognize this the inheritors as legitimate.
Well, and so when the Ron DeSantis and the Glenn Youngkins and the whatever, right? Like Glenn Youngkin, governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, right? Spout lies. They're tactical about spouting lies that reinforce that
Yes.
that boomer sense that, like, oh my God, we have to cling to our power, and
Exactly.
Right. We're being attacked.
they're after our power.
They.
They.
Everybody on this show, The View, is after their power. Yup. On that note, we had another week of The View.
Oh man.
I love how we avoid controversy at all costs.
Right.
We will be back next week for
Oh my
another informative, fun, and fuck-filled.
Yes.
Did you say fun-filled or fuck-filled?
I meant fun-filled is what I meant. I think I may have said it.
That's right. All of it. Yes.
Informative. Have a great week,
Well,
everybody. See y'all next time.
Thanks. Be well, folks.
Be well. Thank you for joining us. Special thanks to those of you who give generously to this ministry. It is because of you that this ministry is possible. You can click the link in the description to give now, or visit clfuu.org/give for more information. We hope you will join us next week for another episode of The View.